4.
Let's get hungry, ladies.
1, 2, 3, 4.
One. Folks! That's so jarring. My
That was
god.
so loud.
Okay.
It probably sounds like terrible on camera. But today is the first episode of your new favorite food review show. We're not naming names, but we're just better now.
Sorry, we're putting BuzzFeed out of business.
Wow, we didn't name names.
Not to. BuzzFeed, watch out. Because we are going to single-handedly end your company, take over your fortune, and eat all of your employees, and then make a food review show about that.
Next episode, cannibalism.
Next episode, we are the Cannibal Comes.
Yes, but welcome to Em&M Eats, an overview of treats. I'm Em, your most favorite girl with voluminous hair and a terrible voice on camera.
My name is M, or the subsequent part of M&M, and I have an undiagnosed lactose intolerance, and I probably will release all of this after the episode is over. My voice also sounds pretty bad on camera.
If you start a Patreon, that'll be a Patreon episode.
So subscribe to our Patreon if you want to see me in the bathroom like half an hour or so.
we make Em drink a milkshake
And
then film the process.
yeah. It's also a part ASMR video where you get to hear the gurgling of my innards as I consume dairy. So what are we going to be talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking about Chinese cuisine in the United States. So, you just drop off.
That was a staple I didn't want us to consume. M&M Eats suffers from punctured intestines.
Yum. But yeah, so what we're going to be talking about today is... are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay.
What we're going to be talking about today is Chinese...
Okay.
So what we're going to be talking about today is Chinese cuisine in the United States. It's something that is available almost everywhere, and so super accessible, and something that a lot of people like relate to the term takeout. So when you say takeout, you're probably going to go for Chinese food, if not some other Asian dish.
Yeah. And we're also going to be talking about the authenticity of Chinese food in America, the history of Chinese food in America, and a fun little segment on the history of fortune cookies.
The history of fortune cookies. We just don't cut that at all.
We're just like, oh wait, for fortune cookie. The history of... Okay, I think we should introduce like the purpose of our show and why we're doing it.
Yeah, so let's talk about what M&M Eats intends to do.
So the purpose of this show, which many of you may guess is a cast project, but I think it's just so much more than that. I think it's just so much more than that, especially when you're when you have the ability to talk about what you love and what you enjoy, and I guess what you're passionate about. It doesn't always have to be a cast project. It is a cast project though, but it's not at heart. So the purpose of our show is to talk about the rich history of ethnic cuisines in America and the cultural implications of the foods in America, the ever-evolving state of that food in our country and the
We're trying to talk about it like from the perspective of Americans in the United States and how we feel about it. One thing we want to say, just a little PSA, is we're not trying to say don't eat Chinese cuisine, don't eat Chinese takeout, or like any stuff like that. We're trying to say that we're trying to take a look at what we are going to consume and what we are like intaking in our bodies, and like the origins of that and the meaning of that in the United States.
Yeah.
So
think of it as a learning experience and not like, hey, don't. After learning about this, like, don't eat this food.
I 100% guarantee that we are definitely going to finish everything here, and we're going to eat Chinese takeout again later. So
yes, probably in the upcoming week. Like, this is gonna be my lunch for the next week. So
yeah, do not take this as a video where we're trying to say don't eat Chinese takeout. We're just taking a look at it.
Yeah.
Eating montage.
Yeah.
We're just gonna eat our lunch and then you're gonna watch.
Yeah, and you're gonna watch us eat.
Yum.
Oh wait, do you want some of this?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
You want some of this? I can take out the parts I don't want.
Okay, thank you. It should just be a time lapse of us eating. Wait, let's just stare into the camera. This is like the worst, the hottest, and I mean the hottest mukbang in history. It's not even a full mukbang because I'm pretty sure we can't eat all of this. Granted, you also don't know what we're capable of. I can sleep for 12 hours. I can sleep for 12 hours straight.
I pushed this whole table with my knees. Folks!
How do we segue into this?
So now we're gonna start a second segment.
Yeah.
Of actually talking about it instead of just eating the food and then like
talking about Riverdale. So first we're going to talk about the origins of Chinese food in the United States, and then the second topic is the authenticity of Chinese food in America, and Emma will be discussing
fortune cookies.
And we have a couple here, which in the rice. Okay, all right. We've got our scholar jackets on, as you can see.
Yeah, that means we're going into the second segment.
Yeah, once you see us wearing our denim jackets, you know.
In this area.
In this. Yeah, no. Otherwise, if you see us wearing these jackets,
we're not scholars.
We're not scholars.
We're not scholars.
Disclaimer, we're not scholars.
At this table, jackets on.
Yep.
We're mild scholars.
We're somewhat scholars.
Semi-scholars?
Semi-scholar. Yes.
The semi-scholar table.
The semi-scholar table. You may remember in Hamlet that scholars can speak to ghosts. We can also do that. And we're going to talk about the origins of Chinese food in the United States. So, many of you know the California Gold Rush of the 1800s, so 1849 specifically. And that kind of marked the beginnings of Chinese food in America, especially in San Francisco. Chinese Lunar New Year is celebrated in many Chinese or Chinese American households, which marks the beginning of a prosperous new year, which is celebrated with foods, different types of foods, and a New Year dinner with extended family. And these types of foods are often seen in American takeout cuisine today, such as dumplings, rice cake, and longevity noodles. The New Year is celebrated with parades and fireworks, quite similar to the American New Year's that we celebrate. And this in turn incited the origins of Chinese food in America, with the largest spring festival celebration held in San Francisco, California. And it is the city with the biggest and the oldest Chinatown in the United States. So that's when Americans were first introduced to what we now know as Chinese food. And so in 1849, the California gold rush saw a rise in a whole bunch of gold diggers hoping to seek those shiny nuggets throughout the Pacific. But not only that, the gold rush saw an increase in Chinese immigrants due to the merchants in Canton of South China. They sought gold in the Pacific Northwest, so the gold rush provided a good opportunity to migrate to the United States. And this rich Chinese port was a center for international trade and commerce, which led to entrepreneurial classes seeking out golden opportunities in the Bay. And the first Chinese immigrants from China actually went to San Francisco by providing services for miners through groceries, merchants, and restaurant owners. So by the mid-19th century, the United States saw a rise in the restaurant culture that we see today, and due to the increase in Chinese restaurants in the Bay Area. So at that time, Chinese restaurants were called chow chow houses. So yeah, that again brings us into the whole devastating issue with racism. And so again, the American relationship with Chinese immigrants was slightly less palatable. And due to the increase in their presence in the West, anti-Chinese sentiment grew as they were constantly scapegoated for declining wages and fewer job opportunities, which eventually led to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, repealed in 1943. Something that we have all learned in English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have to say, like, the blaming of immigrants, like, for the loss of jobs is not a new thing in the United States, for sure.
Yeah.
We've always sort of, like, ousted the minorities, I would say, in the United States, and, like, instead of, like, trying to find solutions, we immediately point the finger and try to blame others. So things aren't new in that area.
Yeah. And I mean, we continue to, again, see that today with, as Emma said, like, scapegoating immigrants, but also we continue to take part in their cultures. Like, oh, I'm still, like, again, a prominent example in today's society is like, oh, the Mexican immigrant issue, but yet you see people continuing to, like, take part in their culture and eat Mexican food, but they're like, hey, but get those people out, they're not, it's...
We don't want any Hispanics in the United States, but we're definitely willing to take advantage of their culture.
Right, yeah.
So...
And clearly that is not a new thing. And despite the initial success of Chinese restaurants in America, that actually became a focal point for anti-Chinese sentiment, with prejudiced groups labeling Chinatowns as nuisances due to the unpleasant stench and of the Chinese kitchens. Yet, but again, we still saw a rise in these miners. That was like their primary source of, like, not only of Chinese immigrants who were miners, but also miners, like American miners. That's where they had food. That's where, they connected with other people. And then, again, they found a way to, like, tie that back into racism. And it's just, So, despite of the backlash, the food was still bomb. Turn of the 20th century saw a rise in chop suey joints, especially in urban cities such as New York, San Francisco. And it was a hip and affordable place for urban citizens to spend a night out. And like most Chinese dishes in the United States, it consisted of meat, eggs, and vegetables that weren't authentically Chinese. And fun fact, chop suey fact, we're stealing something from BuzzFeed's Worth It. Chop suey fact. Chop suey actually means odds and ends, or colloquially known as leftovers. So, a little fact, I guess. And those are the origins of Chinese food in the United States. As you can see, like many other foreign foods that see their rise in America, it oftentimes comes with like repercussions regarding racism and prejudice, and it's just very prominent in America today. So that was, the origins of Chinese food in America, and that kind of brings us to our next segment about the authenticity and the evolution of Chinese food in America. So again, regardless of its somewhat ambiguous authenticity, the adaptations of Chinese food really has become more Americanized and geared towards Americans, simply because, origins of Chinese food in America started with beginning in a place where there weren't many immigrants. It was just like Chinese citizens or Chinese migrants coming into America and starting their own restaurants as like a hub for their own culture and, a sort of like allusion back to home. And so I guess in that sense, the authenticity isn't necessarily ambiguous, but today I do believe that it is somewhat.
Yeah, it's definitely, of course, all food evolves from its original state, and obviously a Western palate is much different than an Eastern palate.
Right.
And in order to treat Americans to something that they'll be more likely to buy,
be susceptible towards,
then you have to, I guess, alter your recipe.
Yeah, and I guess that actually does suck though.
Yeah, it's actually really bad that authentic Chinese food isn't really available anywhere.
In America, yeah.
Because our Chinese food is the American Chinese food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is not authentic Chinese food. And again, that's something that we are going to be discussing. Adaptations of Chinese food has been geared towards Americans and American society, as appealing to American palates is and was essential in the proliferation and the popularization of Chinese cuisine in the United States, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And so throughout the early 20th century, Chinese food has become sweeter and boneless and deep fried. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
I mean, look at what's before us. We have an egg roll, literal fried chicken.
Yep. Ribs. Yeah.
Which are sweet, and then
incredibly sweet. I have General Tso's tofu, which, again, no spoilers, but that is not necessarily Chinese food. But so again, most of these things that we see in our food that we've consumed today, for example, my General Tso's tofu, broccoli is not a vegetable that is traditionally found in Chinese cuisine in China. And it's actually completely unheard of in China. So once it appeared on menus along with fortune cookies, a sweet originally thought to be in Japan, again, that is a theory that we'll be testing later on. Some of these things aren't even in authentic Chinese cuisine. So it wasn't until the 60s and the 70s that the United States finally got into authentic Chinese cuisine. And the typical Chinese food at the time was actually derived from Cantonese cuisine, which is just one of the eight broader regional cuisines in China. I think with that, we began to see a significant spike in Chinese food in the United States, especially in the 1960s. And that brought in new food babies from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and the mainland of China. And that's when the United States experienced this sort of renaissance of really good Chinese eats at the time, especially in cities in the United States such as New York, again, San Francisco, mainly urban populations at the time. And with the years that followed, Chinese chefs came from China to the ever-receptive United States. And with the growing obsession of all things Chinese, the United States, this was mainly fueled because of Richard Nixon.
Our favorite guy.
Our favorite president. His 1972. No, we don't like this. His 1972 visit to Beijing was the first time that an American president had actually visited China ever since the 1949 revolution.
Since then. So they had been there before.
They had been there before, but it wasn't necessarily something that we sought after.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't it wasn't popular or becoming popular at the time. No. So there was it didn't do anything.
No. Yeah. So, I mean, with that, the demands for Chinese food just exploded overnight when people they got to see footage of Richard Nixon consuming foods such as Peking duck, which is, again, something that I learned from Worth It. Stephen and Andrew, my kings. Okay, sorry, those. Alright, redo that.
We slobber all over him. This whole show is us trying to be Stephen and Andrew and failing.
Us, tag yourself as Stephen or Andrew. Say who you are. 3, 2, 1.
Andrew.
Stephen. Okay, alright. It worked out.
Because I have the blank personality of Andrew a little bit.
I mean, but in the best way possible.
In the best way possible. Andrew, you're my hero. Stephen, you're also my hero.
Stephen, you're also my hero. And Adam.
Adam, we don't have one of you, but we wish we did.
Yeah.
Adam, will you come film for us?
Please do. Seriously, we do need a third person to film for us. But, besides that, the demands for Chinese food exploded overnight because there was video footage of Richard Nixon consuming foods such as Peking duck, which is this... I guess it's, okay, what I learned is it's this duck that you put air into it and then you, I don't know, you hang it and then you put it overnight in some...
So it's dries out?
It's dry, yeah, it dries out. So it has this crispy exterior, and then I think what they do is they skin the crispy skin off and then you eat it. It's confusing but very cool, and
sounds super yummy.
Yeah. If I wasn't vegetarian, I would consume that, but...
And because I'm not vegetarian, I probably will.
Yeah. So you got a half and half perspective here. So again, with Peking duck and other Chinese foods that they got to witness Nixon eat on TV, that sort of led to this spike of Americans eating Chinese food. Who knew? Nixon,
I mean, there's one thing you did right.
Yeah, allowing us to eat Chinese, or not allowing us, but
popularizing it in the United States.
Yeah, which again sucks. I don't want to attribute any of these successes to Nixon. I'm sorry to the Nixon fans out there.
We don't like him. We don't like him.
We just don't like Nixon. War on drugs.
Literally anything.
Literally anything. Yeah.
Literally just anything that he did.
Yeah.
Except for this.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah. And again, that led to the rise of Chinese food in America. So, some statistics. Statistic time.
Statistics time. We both hate math.
We hate math. Math studies. Okay, so if my math studies mind can comprehend this. Today, according to the Chinese American Restaurant Association, there are over 45,000 Chinese restaurants in operation across the United States.
So that means there has to be at least one in your state. Go to it.
Go to it.
Eat from it. General Tso's fact!
It's not real Chinese food. I'm sorry, but... so, I mean, it is, but it isn't. What we know about General Tso's chicken isn't what it actually is. So, really sad story that we're about to get into. So, this staple meal was actually created by a man in China named Chef Peng. And the original dish actually lacks sweetness and tanginess and has an incredibly salty flavor. And it even lacks the texture of the original dish. So what we know about General Tso's chicken today is it's so sweet. It is so sweet.
Yeah, it is.
It's like
one of the sweetest dishes that you can have.
Like that's what I had today. I had General Tso's tofu. It's sweet. And it's also deep fried.
Yeah.
Whatever we have now, obviously, you know, it is now deep fried. And again, really sad story. Chef Peng was actually incredibly sad to read about the popularized version of his special recipe, as they completely just convoluted the original meaning and the original, you know, recipe that he invented. And America, to appeal to American tastes, again, we have sweetened it up, we have deep fried it, and we, make it more American. And so, again, Chinese cuisine took on an American influence just to make a business out of it, which I think is pretty, again, saddening to hear.
Yeah, sounds pretty American though.
Yeah.
I like capitalism.
Yeah, you know.
Capitalism.
When capitalism ruins cultures, isn't that wonderful? So again, this just begs the question about the authenticity of Chinese food in America. And I mean, it's not to say that, oh, don't go like not enjoy these foods anymore. Obviously, like there are still cultural aspects behind all of these foods.
It's just not authentic Chinese food in a lot of situations. It's Chinese American food.
Yeah. Again, like many other things, we take things from other cultures and then we just dilute it to the point where it's not even the original meaning or the interpretation behind it. Like food is amazing in the fact that it can convey culture, it can convey the background, ethnic, racial background, and it has ties to, you know, festivities and traditions. But I think when we take foods that are so prominent in other cultures and then we just dilute it and keep diluting it to the point where it's just so American that it loses its original meaning.
Especially like if the original creator of the food doesn't want it to be like that.
Exactly.
And then they're still like, just change the name. It's not even it's not even General Tso's chicken anymore.
No, it's just completely different. And then now when you take something that's someone else's and it's just it loses its meaning.
Yeah.
And it's not fair to the people who or the owners or creators of that food. So again, as we said, these traditional dishes were just convoluted, and it just convolutes the true identity of Chinese cuisine to the point where Americans choose to believe that it is authentic without delving deeper into the rich history of these foods or the culture of Chinese food itself. These dishes have changed due to the nature of living in an environment where there are different cultures and different resources that you have to utilize and appeal to. So in that aspect, I understand, but I also just, it's just
I don't
fair.
think you should claim that something that the original chef is like, especially if like they're upset. Like if they're outspoken about like being upset about it.
Right.
You shouldn't take ownership of the dish in that way.
Yeah, exactly. There have been other dishes that aren't seen in China that we actually eat a lot. Crab rangoon, which is filled with crab and cream cheese and typically eaten as an appetizer. So this is actually shocking to people who live in China because dairy is not typically consumed in China because there has never been an emphasis on producing dairy, and a large portion of the population is lactose intolerant. So
lactose intolerant rep. Our local lactose intolerant rep
hasn't been diagnosed, but we all know. We just know.
We just know.
So yeah, a large portion of China's population is actually lactose intolerant. And so yeah, I think the reason as to why we tend to use these vegetables and use dairy is, one, not only to appeal to American audiences, or the American population, Americans, I guess, and it's just something that's readily available. So that way you can just integrate it into known foods and then push it up there for Americans.
Yeah.
So that is all we have for our history, origins, evolution, adaptations, authenticity segment.
Well, in a way, this is about authenticity.
Yeah, right? Again, whatever we're going to talk about next is a big thing on authenticity and the theories of such.
Yeah. So, our next section is the history of fortune cookies. One site that I actually used to do some of this research is called fancyfortunecookies.com, and they're run by a Caucasian couple, and they have a lot of like interesting, I guess, even less authentic than the classic fortune cookie thing. They have flavored fortune cookies, like they have cinnamon, banana, lemon, passion fruit, chocolate, all that type of stuff. You can dip your fortune cookies in chocolate, dip them in caramel, cover them in sprinkles. There's giant fortune cookies like this big, all types of stuff on this site. And they actually had some of the origins, which I did other research too. I used other sites.
I want to build up our credibility.
Yeah. But it talks about the 4 origins. I'm actually probably only going to say the 2 main ones because these are the ones that are most supported. Mm-hmm. The other 2 that they had listed, I didn't see really anywhere else in my research. But what we do know for sure is that it was brought over by immigrants. So there's one theory, Chinese immigrant David Zhang, who founded the Hong Kong Noodle Company in Los Angeles in 1918. Saw a lot of poor people walking around and wanted to give them something to give them food, but also for religious support in a way, because what he did was he made small cookies with biblical scripture in each one and handed them out on the streets. So that's one of the origins of fortune cookies. The other is a Japanese immigrant, Makoto Hagiwara, who was from San Francisco, and to show his appreciation for his friends after a hard time that he experienced. And it's not it's just a low-key hard time, it was a tough time that he actually experienced. Because he got fired by anti-Japanese mayor and he was then rehired. So to show his thanks, he made these fortune cookies and wrote a little thank you note inside each one for all of his friends. He served them at the famous Japanese Teen Garden in Golden Gate Park. And in 1915, they were displayed in the Panama Pacific Exhibition. That's those are the 2 main theories. I'll touch briefly on the other 2. There was land in the 1900s in San Francisco's Chinatown to make it more touristy and traditionally Chinese to attract more people to come in. And there was a lack of desserts because a lot of Americans wanted desserts. So then they tried to fill the space by making a fortune cookie there. So, and it had a little thing of Chinese wisdom inside or prediction. And then this one's super, super old in a way. during the Mongol occupation of China in the 13th and 14th century.
Really old.
Yeah, not even joking. Chinese people hid sayings inside of small cookies or inside of moon cakes because it was said that the Mongols didn't like lotus nut paste, which is like a thing hidden inside of like moon cakes from what I understand about them. They would hide little messages inside that would talk about the revolution against the Mongols. Revolutionary named Chu Yanjiang entered actually Mongol walls in this and gave out mooncakes with all this stuff that helped lead to an uprising against the Mongols. That was the basis of the Ming Dynasty. I don't think those last two are the ones that are technically the origins of it. I think it was actually either of the first two. I'm leaning more towards the Japanese one because a similar type of thing to the fortune cookie was made in Japan. It wasn't a sweet thing, it was a salty thing. It contained miso, and they made the fold of the fortune cookie, the place, or like this part of the fortune cookie right here, the place where you put the message and not in the hollow inside. That is like where the idea of the fortune cookie originally came from, or like the most prominent theory. It was a darker type, a little bit larger from what I understand, and that's like why I think Hagiwara was the one that actually brought it over because of his Japanese descent.
And that's like the theory that we usually know about, though.
Yeah. Fortune cookies aren't really a Chinese thing. In fact, they're likely more to be from Japanese descent. It's actually kind of sad the way that it became more related to Chinese cuisine. During World War II, when Japanese Americans were sent into essentially internment camps, the Chinese are said to have jumped on the idea and taken it over for a more Chinese cuisine like tradition. Those are like the main origins of the fortune cookie. It's kind of funny, there was actually a court case in San Francisco's Court of Historical Review trying to settle the dispute in 1983. This is straight from Wikipedia, what I'm about to read. But during the proceedings, a fortune cookie was introduced as a key piece of evidence with a message reading, San Francisco judge who rules for LA is a not very smart cookie. A federal judge of the Court of Historical Review determined that the cookie originated with Hagiwara, and the court ruled in favor of San Francisco. Which is a very biased proceeding, I would have to say, because it happened in the San Francisco Court of Historical Review.
Oh, God.
Which is where he was from. And also, what is that evidence?
That is less credible than any of the sources in my Don't take that for granted. So they essentially just provided a cookie as evidence.
Yes, a small cookie message was
the determining piece of evidence.
It wasn't the determining piece of evidence, but it was sort of like a thing that was just like rude to the judge.
Oh my God.
That was made to look like it was from the guy from San Francisco, or the guy from Los Angeles.
Oh, David Young.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So we don't. It's not really sure if that even came from him. It could have been planted. I don't even know. It was very vague. Thank you, Wikipedia. That was it was a fun piece of evidence.
Yeah.
I would qualify myself as a not very smart cookie. So like.
Determining if these theories are real.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I get that though.
Yeah, but overall, what is agreed is that fortune cookies were not originated in China. In fact, when they were found to be sold in Hong Kong, it was called genuine American fortune cookies. It wasn't even like it wasn't, here's fortune cookies, American fortune cookies. It's not something that they like
originally had. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, when fortune cookies were tried to be spread over China, they were seen as too American and not wanted.
Running theme here, folks.
Cool stuff about fortune cookies though, I mean, if at this point you even like fortune cookies anymore. 3 billion fortune cookies are made a year, so that's almost half the population of the world. And we know that China does not want them. So there's literal half of the population of the world. There's one for everyone. There's one for everyone.
Well, I mean,
and you know where a majority of them are consumed? Right here in the United States. We are eating those fortune cookies, folks. They're not going anywhere.
They're only going in American stomachs, and American stomachs only, so.
In fact, the largest producer of fortune cookies is in the United States, in Brooklyn, New York. It's known as the Wonton Food Incorporated. I'm gonna see if these are from there. It doesn't look like it.
But these are, China Walk
actually yes they are.
Oh my god!
They are from Wonton Food Incorporated. It says right here on the thing.
Oh my god. In Brooklyn, New York, yeah.
Funny stuff about that too. After a lot of people, I think some people have heard of this, but after a lot of people started using their lucky numbers from the Wonton Inc. Fortune cookies and winning, the authorities had to investigate Wonton Incorporated. And found nothing. It was just chance.
My math buddy.
One thing I also thought was very interesting that Wikipedia said about fortune cookies is that, surprisingly, their small size means they have little nutritional value overall. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought that Americans would consume anything with nutritional value?
Anyway, in Peru, they're served in the chifas, or Chinese Peruvian fusion food restaurants. The Mexican version of fortune cookies are called the Lucky Taco, which I thought was very cute. But it's a red taco-shaped fortune cookie with a fortune inside. The same company that makes the Lucky Taco also makes the Lucky Cannoli, which is inspired by Chinese cannolis. I don't.
That's like the thing that my mom was actually talking about. She was insisting that I bring up Indo-Chinese food, which is like Indian Chinese food. Something that is available, or it's honestly like, you can see it in many Indian restaurants, but the thing is that we take the Chinese food, but then we make it more Indian than it is Chinese, but then slap on the name Chinese, and it's just like, what is you're just completely losing the meaning behind it.
And one thing I will say that when we went to China Walk, there was a section that was called American Food, where they were just going to make you American food at a Chinese restaurant.
Exactly. Like, I don't know, if you're like willingly seeking out American food,
why would you go to China Walk?
Exactly. Don't go to the Chinese restaurant if you want
American food. I wish I looked at what things were under it, but I was just sort of like,
we were so hungry to the point where
we were just like, we just want Chinese food.
Yeah.
We just want Chinese food right now. But one thing, I hate to end on like a sadder note after that sort of like funny segment in a way. But fortune cookies and a lot of other, I guess, like Chinese cuisine items, they're used to stereotype Chinese Americans and Chinese people as a whole. One person who's the senior staff attorney at the Asian American Institute in Chicago, his name is Andrew Kang. He says that, I think it does go to what people think when they think of Asians. They think of food, because that is really the only point of contact or awareness with the Asian American community. So, and the Asian American Journalists Association discourages associating ethnic food with Asian Americans in news coverage. which I would say is a very smart thing to do, especially if like it's something that's been used to stereotype a whole community.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would say Americans have a thing with that.
Right.
Just using food to stereotype, which is highly ironic in a way because we are seen as like we're the fat country of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And we use food to stereotype other
people,
other countries, and other like ethnicities and races. So, I mean, take that fucking well.
Yeah, and like, really, I mean, I have actually had this happen to me. I mean, often, like in Connecticut, there was, like, I was really about to say that person's name. Oh my god, Jacob. If you're watching this, call me Curry one more time. Okay, we're gonna cut that out. So this is something that I have experienced. I mean, obviously we're not gonna equate. I mean, you know, yeah, like
I would say I think you could equate.
It's almost
that is stereotyping.
Dehumanizing people, like an entire country of people to food. And oftentimes food that isn't necessarily authentically their food is so dehumanizing, and you can't just reduce people to mere descriptions of food. It's disgusting, and that's just not the way that you should approach.
Also, like incorrectly stereotyping different races and religions and relating them to food. Like I hate this. But someone in my own family, like not something that I'm closely related to, they're sort of like the side of the family that we low-key shop.
For
but
reasons.
she, whoever she is, she said she was calling out our Muslim representatives in the house and said, "Wake up and smell the curry, America." It's even, I would say, like, it's still terrible, but like even it's even worse when
wrong. Yeah. I was gonna say, like,
also when like these people aren't American citizens, they're born in the United States. So like, believe it or not, some people that are Indian or Chinese or whatever race or ethnicity, they may have never been to the country of their origin.
Exactly.
Or like,
exactly. Like, I know a couple of people that, you know, Indians that have never been to India, and just, you know, even saying that or alluding to the fact like, oh, you're not American because you're clearly a different race or ethnicity is just
disgusting.
It's disgusting. Yeah. And even then, like, incorrectly like tying them to food, like a religion to a food, it's just so wrong, and that's not something that I think that's something that Americans have to work on. Like,
definitely educate yourselves. Even if it's freaking Wikipedia.
Exactly.
Like,
that's a credible source.
Yeah, also,
that is a credible source.
Wikipedia is like, I would say, especially like pages like or like pages that are highly visited.
Yeah.
You're definitely gonna get real information.
Exactly.
Like, they're fact checking all the time because of like,
you know,
the idea that they're not fact checking.
Yeah.
It's like they're doing it even more frequently.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, just educate yourself a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
And
don't take things for face value. Again, like, just like, food isn't something that you just. I mean, yes, it is something that sustains our bodies and our lives, but like, it's not something you just like pump to your mouth and you're like, yeah, blah blah blah. This is just, I'm eating to eat. Oftentimes, it has cultural meaning, it has values, and it has ties to different places around the world. And if you don't take the time to realize that or learn about it, it loses its significance, and that's not something that we want. We want America to be diverse, and if that means taking the extra step and learning about these cuisines, Go for it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're here to do. That's why we're doing this.
We want to be better. We want to be more educated, and I feel like that's something that you can always do. You can always be more educated.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever think for 1 second that you know everything, because there's always more to learn, even if it's not about food.
Yeah, again, this isn't just constrained to the area of food. This is like pushing through borders beyond that. So if that means going on Wikipedia and searching stuff, that's fine. We support it. And
so get hungry, ladies.
3, 2.
Get hungry, ladies.
We'll see you next time with an episode on another food. And if you have any suggestions to foods that you would like us to try or research, or things that you would like to learn more about, please comment down below. Follow us on our Instagram. It is in the description. Or you can email us.
Yeah.
Take that route.
Email us, unlike Jeremy from Instagram support.
Yeah, Jeremy, if you're watching this, just know that we're out to get you.
We really needed that account unlocked. We really, really needed it.
It was literally our only username that worked really well. So Jeremy from Instagram. That was good. We should get a video of us eating the fortune cookies.
Oh yeah, we should. We should keep. This will be our bonus feature.
For our non-Patreon viewers.
Yeah. Also, this one has 2 in it. Thanks, Wonton Foods Inc.
Yeah.
Or Wontoning.
We screw it up. Yeah, I know. Oh, that was the 3,000,000,001 cookie that we made this year. You can read our portions. Okay.
You go first.
Tension in a partnership, it might be time for you to delegate. Okay.
Fully mean.
I don't know. It's just vague enough that you can like apply it to any scenario in your life.
Tension in a relationship.
Tension in a relationship.
Time to delegate. Maya pouring more pink lemonade. I'm just kidding, my cup's full.
I just get acid reflux. Okay, your turn.
Mine is not as good as that one, but it's one touch of nature makes the whole world kin. I don't know what that means.
Makes the whole world kin?
Nasty.
What the hell does that even mean?
I touched a blade of grass today walking from my car to Maya's house. The whole world and me.
Kin.